Welcome to the deep dive. So you sent us this great interview with Julie,
Oh, yeah.
a former England footballer, and you mentioned that you were interested in kind of like the behind-the-scenes world of women's football, especially in those years before it went professional.
Right.
And so we're going to do a deep dive on that today. Really look at Julie's journey to the World Cup,
Absolutely.
the choices that she had to make, and how her story really kind of connects to the game today.
Yeah, what's so interesting about Julie's story is that it's like it's sort of timeless in a way, right? I
Yeah.
mean, she's talking to her experiences, but it really reflects so many of the, experiences of players across all these different eras of
Yeah.
the sport. And we'll really get into that today, like the reality of, that commitment, what it means for players' personal lives, and, just those moments that really define a career in football, right?
Yeah, for sure. And, you mentioned that you were interested in those choices that players had to make back then, especially before professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that really stood out to me in Julie's interview was how, even as like a young player, she was already making these decisions that had huge consequences.
Right.
Like, do you remember when she was talking about choosing the World Cup over her A-levels?
Yeah.
I mean, for people who maybe aren't familiar with that, A-levels are like these big exams that students in England take.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really important for like getting into university and stuff like that, for their future careers.
Oh, yeah.
And Julie was essentially having to choose between her education and this chance, this like,
One shot.
shot at playing in the World Cup.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating there is she had no way of knowing how it was going to turn out.
Yeah.
It's like the crystal ball effect.
Right.
They often have to make these big gambles, like with their whole future, right?
Totally.
Not knowing if that one chance, that opportunity is going to lead to anything, or if it really was their only shot.
Yeah, it's like stepping through this door, right? It's just like,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you have no idea what's on the other side.
Totally.
It's scary, but it's also exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it wasn't just her education, that was kind of on the line. Julie was really honest about how football impacted her relationships, her family, just like every part of her life.
Yeah.
It makes you think about all these sacrifices that athletes make, right? That we don't even see.
Right, these invisible sacrifices
Yeah.
for their passion.
And it makes me wonder, like, as a society, do we even like really understand what those sacrifices
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
Are we demanding too much? Like, are we expecting them to just pour everything into the sport?
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, what about their personal lives?
Totally. I mean, Julie's story really forces us to confront that question,
Yeah, it really does.
Um,
It also challenges this idea that success is just about talent,
yeah.
right? Like, do you remember how she was talking about her team? Like, at Charlton, they basically refused to travel without their families.
Oh, yeah.
It makes me think about how vital these support networks are,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not just about like the individual player.
It's about the team around them.
It's about the whole team around them.
Yeah, absolutely. That story really, it's such a powerful anecdote, right?
Yeah.
It speaks volumes about, community and how that can really fuel success. But, it also makes you think, right? Is there a risk, of focusing too much on the network and not enough on maybe the individual's drive and ambition?
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a tricky balance.
But you're right. It's not one or the other.
Right.
It's both. But that story about the team bus,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It just it really stuck with me. It really humanized those early days of women's football.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed just how different things were back then.
Oh, yeah. The contrast with today's professional game is huge. I mean, especially in terms of resources, support, all the content.
Yeah.
But what I found really interesting was that Julie's story still highlights all these these timeless themes, team dynamics,
Right.
different coaching styles, the emotional pressure of competition.
Right.
These are all things that players grapple with, no matter what era they're playing in.
Exactly. And speaking of coaching styles, Julie had some pretty strong opinions about the different managers she played under.
Mm-hmm.
And she even suggested that sometimes female players, they respond better to a certain type of leadership.
Right.
And it's a type that, maybe male coaches aren't always equipped to give.
Right.
Right.
That's a really crucial observation, because it really challenges this assumption that leadership is, one size fits all. It
Yeah.
really like shows that coaches need to adapt
Mm-hmm.
to understand what their players need individually
Yeah.
and create an environment where, where everyone can thrive.
Right. And it ties into something that you were talking about earlier, like the emotional toll of the game.
Yeah.
Do you remember how Julie talked about getting that second yellow card
Yeah.
during the Euro qualifier?
Mm-hmm.
And that meant she had to miss the next game.
Oh, right.
And she was adamant that it was like a bad call by the referee, and you could just like hear the frustration in her voice
Yeah.
as she was talking about having to deal with, that kind of injustice.
Even for, experienced athletes, those moments like a bad call or a missed opportunity, an injury,
Right.
they can be so difficult.
Absolutely.
It really highlights, those psychological pressures
Yeah.
that athletes face, like this constant need to, you know, to manage expectations
Mhm.
and to be resilient and bounce back from these setbacks.
And it wasn't just on the pitch, right? She also talked pretty openly about her decision to leave Arsenal,
Oh, yeah.
which was a top club at the time,
Hmm.
and go back to Charlton.
Wow.
She said that she felt like unsettled at Arsenal, like constantly pushed to do more and more.
Hmm.
And ultimately, she was just happier back at Charlton.
It's such a great example, of how success doesn't always equal fulfillment. Like
Yeah.
Julie's story really reminds us that athletes are people
Yeah.
with complex emotions, motivations.
Right.
It highlights how important mental well-being is.
Totally.
And that athletes need to prioritize their own happiness, even if it means making, unconventional choices,
For sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like leaving a topic club.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the pressure, right? Like the pressure they face even when they're at the top of their game.
Yeah.
Leaving a club like Arsenal.
Yeah.
I mean, that couldn't have been an easy decision.
No, not at all. It really challenges this whole idea, right? Like this narrative we always hear about ambition and just, relentlessly going after success. And
Right.
Julie's story is like, it's almost like a reminder, that sometimes taking a step back
Yeah.
can be the most courageous thing you can do.
And the most fulfilling.
And the most fulfilling, exactly.
And remember, she was dealing with a lot off the pitch, too.
Oh, yeah.
She talked about, juggling a job and family commitments.
Right.
And then her dad's health was declining and she was dealing with all that emotional weight.
It's just incredible how she managed all of that,
It really is.
It's such a powerful example, right, of how, like, an athlete's personal life, it's all intertwined with their career. It's
So-
not just about what happens on the field.
It's about the whole person.
It's about the whole person. Exactly. And for Julie, it was her commitment to her family, her work ethic,
Yeah.
her passion for the game.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that contributed to this, like, remarkable journey.
Hearing about, like, her experiences, especially, back then when there were no professional contracts.
Right.
It really, I don't know, it really hit home for me just how different things were.
Oh, yeah.
It's inspiring to see how dedicated these women were,
Yeah.
making these huge sacrifices
Just to play the game.
just to play the game they loved.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast to the opportunities that women have today, right, in the game. But I think it's important to remember that while professionalism has brought, a lot of resources and visibility,
yeah.
some of the core challenges, they're still there.
Yeah.
Right? Like the pressure to perform, the emotional ups and downs, the constant juggling act
Yeah.
between your personal life and your ambitions as an athlete.
It's a theme that, like, goes across generations.
It really
She even
does.
mentioned, like, turning down a professional contract offer.
Oh,
from Fulham.
wow.
She said, she had a mortgage and other responsibilities.
Right.
And she just couldn't afford to take the risk.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that talent alone wasn't enough back then.
No, it speaks to like this harsh reality that so many female athletes face
Yeah.
and sadly, still face in some parts of the world.
Absolutely.
That lack of financial security, it can be like a massive barrier,
Right.
Forcing athletes to make these impossible choices
Yeah.
between like their passion and just, being able to make a living.
It's a reminder that, like, the path to success in women's football, it wasn't always paved with endorsements and sponsorships.
Right?
These women were pioneers,
They really were.
paving the way for everything we see today.
Yeah, Julie's story and the stories of, so many others from that time, they just like, they highlight the
Mhm.
transformative power
Yeah.
of passion and resilience. They achieved amazing things, even though they faced, so many
He
obstacles.
did.
And their legacy, I mean, it's still inspiring generations of players.
Absolutely. And, you know, even though she faced all these challenges, Julie told her story with, like, such warmth
Yeah.
and humor. Like, remember when she was talking about putting Vaseline on her legs before games to keep out the colds?
Oh, yeah.
Or her pre-game ritual? She was saying, even though she doesn't need shin pads anymore,
Right.
she still puts on her right sock and boot before the left,
That's so funny.
just like she did when she was playing.
I love that.
It's those little details that really make her story come alive,
Oh, yeah. It just reminds us, right, that even, like, these elite athletes,
Yeah,
they have their parks, their routines,
right.
and it makes it makes their achievements feel more relatable.
Totally. And it's clear that, like, you know, her love for the game, it hasn't sated.
No.
She was even saying how she joined, like, a local social football club
Yeah.
just to have a kickabout with other women.
That's
When I
awesome.
was joking with her, I was like, oh, maybe we need, like, a senior England Lionesses team.
That's a great idea.
And she was all for it.
Oh, that's so cool. It just speaks to, like, the power of sport,
Yeah?
to connect people, create these lasting bonds.
Right.
And who knows, maybe that senior team isn't such a far-fetched idea.
I know, right?
It'd be amazing to see these legends back on the pitch.
I would be first in line for tickets.
Me too.
But, even if that doesn't happen, Julie's story highlights something really important.
What's that?
It's not just about reaching the destination.
Right.
It's about the journey.
The journey.
It's about the memories you make, the lessons you learn, the people you share it all with.
And it's about finding that purpose and meaning.
Yeah.
Even after, your playing days are over.
For sure.
Whether it's through coaching or mentoring or just, sharing your passion with others.
Right.
There's always another chapter.
Always a next chapter.
Waiting to be written.
And Julie clearly embraces that philosophy.
Yeah.
Her story, it's an inspiration, not just in sports, but for anyone,
Right.
who's facing a tough decision or chasing a dream.
Absolutely.
It reminds us that even when things get hard,
Yeah.
there's always a way forward.
If you stay true to yourself.
If you stay true to yourself and your passions,
And your passions.
it really makes you think about how, like, even those individual choices
Mm-hmm.
that we make as athletes, it's like they ripple outwards.
Yeah, they have consequences.
They have consequences. Like her decision to step back from the national team
Right.
to focus on her family.
Exactly. Or think about the impact she had on her younger teammates
Oh, yeah.
at Charlton,
She was such a leader by example, both on and off the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really highlights the human side of the game,
It does.
right? The sacrifices, the uncertainties, the constant battle
Mhm.
to balance, like, your personal life
Yeah.
with this all-consuming passion.
It makes you question, those narratives that
Yeah.
we hear about athletic success, right?
Totally.
It's not always about, chasing glory,
Pushing yourself to the limit.
pushing yourself to the limit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about knowing when to step back,
Right.
when to prioritize, like, well-being over achievement.
Yeah, Julie's story really, like, makes us think about what success actually means.
It really redefines it, right?
Yeah.
Both in sport and in life.
And it makes us think about the expectations,
Yeah,
right, that
yeah.
we place on athletes and how we support them.
Yeah, are we doing enough?
Are we doing enough?
To help them through all these pressures, these challenges
Yeah.
they face during their career. But also, after Julie's story, it highlights this need for, like, a more holistic approach.
Yeah.
One that sees the athlete
As a person.
as a whole person.
Right, whole person.
Its needs and aspirations, yeah.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener?
Yeah, good question.
I think Julie's story really gives us a different way of looking at,
Yeah.
what it means to be an athlete.
It's not just about the trophies,
Yeah.
right? The medals.
About the journey.
Yeah, the journey, the choices,
The choices, the relationships,
the connections,
Yeah.
the impact we have on each other.
and the impact we have on others.
Yeah, both on and off the field.
Wow, what a deep dive. I don't know about you, but I am feeling super inspired by Julie's story.
Me too. It's like a reminder that even in the middle of all the intensity of, elite sport,
Yeah.
it's those human connections.
It's the values.
and the values that really matter.
It makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
What stories are today's players going to be telling, like,
20 years from now.
20 years from now?
Right. What choices are they making today that are going to shape those stories?
That's something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.